There's one thing that all of these NBA players have in common. They've all been huge disappointments in the league. They've also all failed to do one very important thing since being drafted: make the team more competitive, which has turned out to be a big problem. For example, Jordan Poole left the defending champion Golden State Warriors to join the Washington Wizards, who were bad at the time. Kevin Garnett even said that Jordan Poole was the new James Harden and had a chance to lead the league in scoring. Since then, his own fans have booed him several times. He's become the new JaVale McGee when it comes to making plays, and he may have had the worst year of his career so far. Not only has he been a huge disappointment on the court, but he's also been a cancer in the locker room. As a star player with championship experience, he was supposed to be a leader, but instead he's been cocky and thinks he's too good. He's also still making the same stupid mistakes that the Warriors had to babysit him for in Golden State, which seemed to happen every night. It shouldn't have been a surprise that things turned out this way, given how things have gone. Yes, it's the first year, and we couldn't expect anyone to fix the terrible Washington Wizards in just one season, but this is very different from when James Harden left the OKC Thunder for the Houston Rockets, and there's no sign of that changing. Poole shouldn't be out there looking like he always needs a veteran player to keep him in check. And that's a common problem for young teams in the league, because a lot of the problems Jordan Poole and the Wizards are having are very similar to those LaMelo Ball and the Charlotte Hornets are having. LaMelo is a great player, and I think he's been everything we expected him to be since entering the league. He's averaged 258 points and 5 assists while shooting well. We can't be mad at what he's given us when he's on the court, and the fact that he hasn't played much in the last 2 years because of ankle injuries isn't even the problem. The problem is the culture in Charlotte. When LaMelo signed his huge extension, he told the general manager that winning and making the playoffs was their top priority. As soon as Terry Rozier joins the Heat, he tells us something we already knew. The Charlotte Hornets are a bunch of young guys who have never seen wins in the NBA playing together and not caring how bad they are. But as the former 3rd overall pick on a max contract, LaMelo's job is to put everyone in their place and change that culture. The star player is supposed to lead the way, and he's done a terrible job of that. Sitting on the bench and laughing and joking while getting blown out by the Knicks isn't a good look. Brandon Miller shouldn't be yelling at his teammates and taking the game more seriously as a rookie. Maybe it's just me, but he seems like the Hornets' worst superstar. He's always been this way, so we knew this was going to happen. On the other hand, Cade Cunningham is a unique case because he seemed to have done everything right as a first-round pick. He's been working hard, he wants to win, he wants to get better, and he has stayed out of trouble off the court. His games have gotten better every season, and now in his 3rd year, he's setting all-time records in every category. In this historically bad season, the Detroit Pistons have the longest losing streak in team history and a record of 3-37 when Cade Cunningham plays and 4-6 when he doesn't. That's 40% of their games won without him and 7% of their games won with him, which is one of the strangest stats going around right now. It's not that the Pistons are bad and can't win, but right now they just can't win with Cade. It seems like a classic case of a team playing more team basketball with better ball movement and accountability when there's not a star on the court. So for Cade and the Pistons to succeed and take the next step, they'll have to figure out how to win with him just as much. Zion Williamson is another first-round pick who hasn't been able to turn around his team. The first pick in the NBA draft is supposed to be a game changer. They're supposed to take a bad team and lead them in the right direction going forward. That hasn't happened because Zion hasn't been able to stay healthy, has had problems with his weight, and has gotten into a lot of trouble off the court. These are all terrible things that should never happen to our first-round pick. It's now been 5 years for him, and it feels like we haven't even gotten to see what he can really do. Because of all of this, his game hasn't improved at all since he was drafted, and it doesn't look like he'll be able to anytime soon. Simmons is another failed first-round pick who is now barely worth talking about. One that still is, but not really, is DeAndre Ayton. The Suns picked him with the first pick in 2018, and he averaged 16 and 10 in his 5 years there, which were great numbers for a young center. So many people thought Phoenix was crazy when they traded him over the offseason for just Yusuf Nurkic. But now DeAndre is starting to show his worth, and the Suns aren't looking so bad after all. He played great in Phoenix while he was there, but he and Devin Booker and himself had constant problems in the front office. So when he gets moved, he becomes the first overall pick and only max contract player on the Portland Trail Blazers. He was supposed to have the best year of his career, lead by example, and do everything he could to make that team better. Instead, his first quote as a Blazer was, "I have nothing to prove in this league, why I'm a max player, and I'll continue to be a max player." That's not what you want your supposed superstar to say. They already got paid, so they don't have anything to prove. In reality, he never proved much of anything. He got paid mostly for potential, never was a great defender, and wasn't worth the pick. Now he's averaging career lows across the board and already looks like he fell off. The latest report about him makes things even worse. It says he failed to impress during his early months in Portland, where he was known for being late and throwing tantrums. And he bears a striking resemblance to Hassan Whiteside, the former Blazers CER, whose stats looked good, but who had little to no effect on the game. And this would just be a story that we could all forget, but that first quote makes it seem real, which is a big problem. Scoot Henderson, his teammate, has also not lived up to the hype so far. Of course, it's only his rookie season, so he's not a draft bust yet, and things can still change. But for now, the player who said he was going to win Rookie of the Year hasn't been even close to being in the running with everyone else who was drafted around him, playing at a much higher level. It's interesting that Scoot was one of the few players who chose to go to the G League instead of going to college or overseas, and now he's having a terrible time, which makes you wonder if it was the right choice. In his first few games, he couldn't finish around the basket, couldn't make three-point shots, turned the ball over too often, got fouled, and made too many mistakes. They just couldn't do anything right. It's just a bad time for Portland right now to have two guys who aren't living up to the hype. He might turn things around, but as we all know, there's also a good chance he never does. I think I have hope, though, because he has had some good games this season. Andrew Wiggins also had a rough start to his career. He had a rough time with the Timberwolves, but once he moved to Golden State, things started to work out. He became an all-star for the first time, but just 2 years later, he's mysteriously dropped off again. He came into the league with as much hype and expectation as anyone else, since LeBron James, and we quickly learned that Andrew Wiggins wasn't going to live up to the hype. He wasn't having the right work ethic, size, skill, or mindset to be a superstar player. But when he broke out in Golden State, all the talk stopped. If he wasn't going to be a superstar, then being a second or third option with lockdown defense on a championship team was good enough to save his reputation and be okay with him being a first-round pick. But that only lasted 2 years, and now he's back to being called the bum. The man had a 2-year prime during which he kind of lived up to all the hype. I guess it could always come back, but it's been a while since we've seen almost nothing else change on the roster, and now he loses his starting spot to a much younger player who's basically the same player I thought Andrew would become a big star in Golden State. But maybe not. He's not the only player who hasn't lived up to the hype in recent years. It's been going on for years. Fans really wanted Bol Bol to do well and become the next Kevin Durant or Victor Wembanyama. Shaq has been very vocal about us since he was drafted, saying he was the real deal. These days, he still says he's just as good as Victor, but it's gotten to the point where even Shaq has turned his back on him. He still says Bol Bol is just as good as Victor, but he's just lazy. Well, that's a huge red flag already because, believe it or not, Bol Bol is in his 5th year, while Victor is still a rookie. He should be way ahead of the game by now, and even playing with Kevin Durant, who would be the perfect mentor for him, isn't helping. I've only seen a few games he's been in, and it's so bad that both offense and defense teams attack him. When he started to guard him, James Harden licked his lips right in his face. I don't know what's keeping Bull in the league, but he looks like the Nastas when he's on the court. I hope he does well, but he's not Wanyama, and his chance to become a star has pretty much passed.